Hello, good evening. Tonight we follow breaking developments as Israel once again faces worldwide condemnation for its violent interception of the global Qnews Flotilla, a convoy of almost 50 boats carrying over 500 activists and symbolic aid to besieged Gaza. In international waters, Israeli naval forces stormed the ships, detaining 443 volunteers from 47 countries, including parliamentarians, humanitarian workers, and the climate activist Greta Thunberg. The raid, described by flotilla organizers as a war crime and flagrant violation of international law, has unleashed protests across Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Asia, while governments scramble to secure the release of their citizens. I'm Mark Summers, and this is In Focus. Welcome to the program. As Ahram Online reports, Israel's naval forces launched a coordinated attack on the flotilla boats using water cannons, sewage spray and stun grenades before towing them into the port of Ashdod. Organizers said communications were jammed as activists live-streamed the assault in real time. Governments reacted sharply. Belgium, Spain, Brazil, South Africa, Italy, Turkey, Malaysia, Pakistan and Colombia condemned the raid. Colombia went as far as announcing the expulsion of Israel's diplomatic mission. Among the detainees, Greta Thunberg, the climate activist, and South African MP Mandela, and multiple European lawmakers. This raises urgent questions. What does this interception mean for international maritime law? And what pressure can the global community realistically apply? Now we're joined from Cairo by the Al Ahram newspaper managing editor, Ashraf Al-Ashri. Thank you very much for being here with us on Qnews. Let's start with this. What is your view on what has happened today and what Israel has done regarding this flotilla?
The raid is a crime against international law that got the anger and discontent of the international community because of the raid that they did, and such operations go against the international law, especially that this flotilla with the boats that exceed 70 boats had medicines and aid to support the Palestinians that have been facing the Israeli seas for more than 2 years. And so this crime was condemned by lots of countries as describing it as a war crime. And it is some kind of maritime piracy, especially that this flotilla was headed to provide humanitarian aid and medicine, especially that in the first time in 2012 Israel did this with the Turkish flotilla, and they killed tens of people then, and then Turkey insisted on a formal apology from Israel, and so Israel is doing this all over again, and they are taking hostages, and this time it is they are doing a large number of brutal crimes, and they have taken and detained lots, and lots of countries have reaffirmed the condemnation of the international community and its refusal to the war crimes done by the Israeli occupation forces on the Palestinians over the past 2 years of genocide.
Now, of course, in this particular flotilla, not only the climate activist Greta Thunberg, who of course is very famous, but also MPs and lawmakers from countries all over, from Europe, from South Africa, and all over the world, Latin America as well. Do you think Israel cares that they're now detaining lawmakers, politicians, people from these countries, these high-profile arrests? Will it put any pressure diplomatically on Israel?
Israel knows that these activists uh, are from the international community. These are lots of them were activists. Some of them are artists or send a humanitarian message. And so this flotilla has been in the water for so long that even for a month actually. And so yeah, Israel tried a lot to hinder them, and I think that what happened yesterday, that was live and everyone was watching it. It was a message that the international community has to say that Israel doesn't care anymore about the international laws or the humanitarian law, and they only care about genocide and about killing and starving the people. And so this time. Everyone is condemning this. Everyone is angry. Now Israel is basically isolated, and there are protests today and tomorrow in lots of European countries. And so this needs the intervention of the international community and the UN that still that are still bound by the USA's rules, and so they need to condemn Israel, isolate it further, and hold them accountable, because what happened breaches all the international laws.
Yes, South Africa and lots of countries have condemned this, as we mentioned earlier in the program. South Africa has said it is Israel continuing to break and flout international law. Colombia has announced the expulsion of Israel's mission in Colombia. Could we see governments perhaps taking similar drastic, more severe steps against Israel?
Yes, of course, with the condemnation, a lot of countries, even in the European Union, but they were friends of Israel yesterday, and they were its allies, but now they condemn it, like Spain and Italy. They have condemned Israel and refused these operations, and they need a strong stance. And like a lot of the European countries have said that the anger right now, the public and global anger, is isolating Israel basically, and everything that they are doing is being held as proof. And now Israel feels that they don't have any allies in the world except for America. And now, you know, Netanyahu won't be in chair long, and neither will Trump be, and so they won't have USA support forever. And the Israeli occupation will end because of the wave of anger in the countries. And what happened with the Samud flotilla shows that Israel is dealing with public anger.
Now, some of the activists have described what has happened as kidnapping. Do you think that is accurate, maybe in legal terms? Of course, this did happen in international waters.
There are some occupation operations that go against and breach the humanitarian law and the international law, and some may think of it as piracy and abducting that need Israel to be held accountable in the international court of. And so, yeah, they need to be held accountable to for attacking the Samud flotilla. And so I think that the international community will need to be held accountable in the ICG, and the activists will not let go of their rights after everything that they have faced of the abduction and forcing them to do things that they didn't want and trying to hinder the aid ever since they started sailing. And so here the USA thinks that they are that they and the USA has been giving them support.
Yeah, I mean, what immediate steps do you think could be taken by the UN, by the ICC? That probably couldn't happen straight away, but could the UN do something to address these violations at all? It hasn't proved to be able to do much so far.
The UN the UN doesn't do anything but condemn and release statements. But countries like South Africa, Egypt and Ireland, they have been refusing everything, and they have they are basically trying to get them to court, to the International Court of Justice, and to get back the rights of those civilians and the Smooth Flotilla. Also, these are international activists that are trying to stand for the rights internationally, and so yeah, they need to be held accountable. But the UN doesn't do anything but to condemn. But they could support them further, but we need the UN to call for a ceasefire, and this is what we're waiting for in the upcoming hours, and to have new conditions and international laws that condemn Israel and stop them from these hostilities.
Now, of course, this flotilla's aim isn't just to try and get aid into Gaza, it's to bring awareness that Israel has this blockade in the first place. Do you think this time and the fact that there were so many high-profile people on board the flotilla, that this time it might help, and the global condemnation, it might help to change global perceptions?
Yes, of course, the goal of the Smooth Flotilla is to get the attention of the international community, especially that they had high-profile pictures of people who had messages, and so they wanted to get the attention of the international community to what's been happening for the past 2 years with the Palestinians, and they wanted to send a political message to the international community that they need to intervene and tell Israel to stop with everything that they're doing in Gaza, and that it is time to have a ceasefire and to save the Palestinians from the starvation and the killings. And so the Israel is trying to keep on with everything that they are doing, but what they did this time was above and beyond, and the Smooth Flotilla wanted to show that Israel doesn't allow the humanitarian aid and they need to be held accountable now. And so this is what the protests are doing, condemning everything that they happened. And so soon we will see we will not see very fruitful outcomes, but on the long run we will see the huge outcomes, and that they will be boycotting Israel and isolating it and maybe even holding it accountable.
Now, as we are seeing, protesters are gathering in Barcelona, rallying in support of the flotilla after Israel's interception in international waters. The demonstrators in Spain add to the wave of, excuse me, add to the wave of anger spreading across Europe and beyond, with thousands demanding the immediate release of detained activists. What's your assessment of how these protests from Barcelona to Buenos Aires could shape some kind of international reaction or put international pressure on Israel?
Yes, of course. These protests are them showing showing the international community the refusal, and like what happened in Madrid, they're sending messages the European countries, Turkey, South Africa, and Latin America. They even expelled Israeli leaders in other countries, and so the protests aren't just in Spain or those refusing the Israeli occupation. They even included Israel's friends and allies, and so this shows that there is a huge wave anger in the whole world, and that this will change things, and the protests will get even bigger in the upcoming days, because there is a state of absolute refusal with the hostilities that Israel is doing, the genocide, the starvation, the killings, and so these protests are aiming to have an international stance against Israel. And I think that this comes from this needs to come from the UN, so that they can get the rights back, and this is what what we're hoping for, so that countries who are recognizing a Palestinian statehood can get larger in number.
And of course, you have someone like Greta Thunberg, of course, who is worldwide famous as a climate activist, and she has many followers and many supporters, especially with young people. Do you think her detention could mobilize some global public opinion, especially perhaps with young people?
So lots of the youth and the young people from 15 to 25 years are refusing the Israeli operations, and there have and lots of the youth who were supporting Israel in the European countries are getting smaller and smaller. There are a lot of youth protests that refuse Israel's operations. Israel is losing its friends, its allies, and very fast. Over the past few months, is because of their operations of the killings and the starvation, and also the new generations in Europe and the USA are refusing completely for their countries to try to support Israel, and they think of it as a criminal country, and Israel is now isolated. And so yes, the youth can make a difference, and it is a huge win for the Palestinian cause, and it supports the Arab countries in supporting Israel. So Israel is losing. It is losing the youth. It is losing the international community with everything that they are doing. And so on the political level and the economic level, they are losing on so many levels, and they're losing the support of the international community.
Now we're hearing around 65 Spanish people, 30 Turkish people, 23 Malaysians, and of course many others from other countries being detained. How are governments handling this crisis when their citizens are being detained by Israel?
These detainees won't stay very long, and Israel will release them and get them out of the country in the upcoming hours. And all of those who were on the Qnews Flotilla, but then these activists, like what Spain and Ireland did, they will take even a stronger stance and action to retaliate from what happened. And so Israel will get them out of Tel Aviv, like what they did with the previous flotillas, and they will force them to sign papers to not get back to any operations that to any operations that support Gaza or go near the borders of Gaza. And so Israel can't do anything to them, but they will force them out of the country, and they will have them sign the papers, and so that they can prevent any protests or have any flotillas going to Gaza again.
And how important do you think the protests are worldwide in keeping the suffering of the people of Gaza on the minds of people all over the world and on the global agenda?
These protests have a positive effect because they further the support for the Palestinians, and they show that there is an absolute refusal, there is an anger wave for the hostilities that the Israelis are doing. They look like the hostilities of World War II, and so yes, if the European and Western countries are moving, so the Israel is losing their support, and it is losing on so many levels, and so now the Israeli leaders have to listen, and the United Nations and other countries have to impose sanctions and to isolate Israel and exclude them from everything, boycott them even, and so and the USA, which is the uh, first supporter of Israel, have to pressure Israel and Netanyahu to stop the hostilities and to reach a ceasefire, like what happened with the past days. They We need more protests even to get even more positive outcomes and positive effects. As we saw, they are moving the countries towards recognition and towards a ceasefire.
And Israel insists that the flotilla is a provocation. How does that narrative stand up when you compare it to what we know is happening to the people of Gaza, and that many of them are starving and suffering from malnutrition?
We need an international stance to not have the people who are trying to help detained again, and so Israel needs to reconsider what it's doing and comply with the United Nations and international community and be held accountable in front of the ICG, and so the international community realize that I think that in the upcoming days we have to take advantage of the peace initiative. Will Israel bow and agree to Trump's proposal? And so we want to see Trump pressure Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire.
And it's worth reminding ourselves, if you could explain to us exactly what this aid blockade means for the children of Gaza, for hospitals, and for famine-hit families in Gaza right now. Can you hear me there? I'll ask again. I wanted to know what exactly the blockade means for children in hospitals and famine-hit families in Gaza.
This is a war crime. This is a brutal crime that doesn't comply with the international community and the international humanitarian law to starve people and kill the elderly and the children. These crimes these are crimes by the international law, and we need to get the rights back. They do not comply with the humanitarian law and the international community. All the countries in the world are refusing this, except for USA. And so these crimes are condemned. The international community refuses it, and this shows because this shows in the protests and the anger against Israel when Trump and Netanyahu met. And so Israel now feels that they are isolated and in a corner, but the international community needs to put words to action. They need more pressure. We need to hold them accountable in the international court. They need to pressure the USA to stop Israel from doing such hostilities against children and women. In the Gaza Strip, the number of the killed and the injuries, this has surpassed the 1,000 people, and this is a war crime, and the international community know that this even goes above and beyond the World War II.
Yes, and with the war entering its third year, over 66,000 Palestinians killed, and that's probably just an estimate, perhaps even more. Do actions like this symbolic solidarity, does it still matter?
Yeah, they changed the stances of the international community that we need an economic and political war against Israel to expose Israel. Over the past 2 years, their hostilities were exposing, actually, to show what kind of country they are, and Palestine has gained supporters day by day. And what the Sumud Flotilla did with providing aid and humanitarian aid, food and medicine, and then having them detained, these protests now are playing a positive role to change things in Palestine's favor, to reach a ceasefire and to recognize Palestinianhood, to have a two-state solution, expose Israel, and impose sanctions on Israel like they do in the European countries, and even expel and fire the Israeli leaders. And so, all in all, Israel is losing and the Palestinians are starting to win the political war to expose the Israeli occupation brutalities.
And when it comes to going back to the flotilla, in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, how do you see things playing out?
Maybe everyone who was on this flotilla, they will be transported from Ashdod, and then they will be put on a plane to Tel Aviv, and forcing them to sign some papers to not come back again, and not to lead such flotillas, and then maybe they'll have a plane or two to get them back to Europe in the next phase. This is what they did before with lots of flotillas that have came before with humanitarian aid, and so there will be an anger wave and protests, and I think that there will be more flotillas, but again, the hostilities of the Israelis and such actions will not stop until there are laws from the UN and the ICG to get Netanyahu and hold him accountable as a war criminal in the court, and to hold the Minister of Defense, and they will release the Sumud activists through the Mediterranean Sea.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on the program, Ashraf Al-Ashri, for giving us your take on what's been happening today. From Cairo, that was Ashraf Al-Ashri from Al-Ahram newspaper, the managing editor. Thank you very much indeed. Now, tonight, the picture is stark. Unarmed civilians on boats with symbolic aid seized in international waters and dragged to detention in Ashdod. Among them, lawmakers, humanitarians, and of course the climate activist Greta Thunberg. Their only crime was sailing toward a starving population under siege. Israel calls it provocation. The world calls it a violation of international law and an attack on global solidarity. From Barcelona to Bogota, Istanbul to Johannesburg, people are in the streets because they know silence is complicity. The global Sumud flotilla may not have reached Gaza, but it has reached the conscience of the world. It has forced us to look again at a blockade that starves children and a war that has already killed more than 66,000 Palestinians. History will not remember the excuses of power. It will remember whether the world chooses to stay silent or to finally say enough. This was In Focus. I'm Mark Summers. Thanks for watching.